You've probably seen it. That black and white logo glowing above a mall storefront, racks of hoodies, walls stacked with decks, and a TV looping skate videos that nobody really watches. That's Zumiez. Once the king of the mall skate scene, now the punchline of it. The story of Zumiez isn't just about a company that sold skateboards, it's about how a mall brand tried to borrow something real and how the culture it mimicked turned its back. By the late 2000s, skaters were clear. Zumiez, they're not one of us. For a brand that once had more than 700 stores worldwide, that's a brutal reputation to live with. And yet, it's exactly what happened. How did Zumiez go from being the store every teenager stopped at to the brand every skater despised? How did a company born in the skateboarding boom of the 70s end up struggling to stay relevant in 2025? It's a story that starts with ambition, slides through greed, and crashes into irony. Because Zumiez didn't just fall, it collapsed under the image it worked so hard to fake. 1978, two entrepreneurs, Thomas Campion and Gary Hackinson, opened a small clothing store in the Northgate Mall of Seattle. They called it Above the Belt. The idea was simple: sell casual clothing for young people with attitude. As skateboarding and BMX exploded in the 80s, the store leaned into that scene. By the mid-80s, they'd rebranded as Zumiez, a name that sounded edgy enough to sit beside brands like Vans. They started expanding fast. New stores popped up across Washington in Everett, Tacoma, and Bellevue. Zumiez wasn't just selling clothes anymore, it was selling belonging. It wanted to be home for kids who didn't fit in at JCPenney or Macy's. The misfits, the ones in hoodies and Vans, hanging out in parking lots with boards under their arms.
Zumiez pulling a bunch of sponsors together to have a festival in a parking lot.
That identity worked. By the early 2000s, Zumiez became one of the biggest specialty retailers in the youth community. It sold everything from skate decks and snowboards to chains, shoes, and energy drink branded hats. In 2005, Zumiez went public. It hit the stock market and ranked in millions. The same year, they launched the Zumiez Foundation, donating thousands of clothing items to people in need. By 2012, they'd given away over 180,000 items across the US. The company looked unstoppable. From there, Zumiez went global, buying out European retailer Blue Tomato in 2012 and Fast Times in 2015. By 2018, it had more than 700 stores worldwide, spanning the US, Canada, Europe, and Australia. But the secret behind that growth? It wasn't skaters fueling it, it was malls. Zumiez built its empire inside shopping malls, right next to Hot Topic and PacSun. They leaned on walk-in traffic, mall culture, and teens killing time. Inside, the setup was always the same: couches, TV screens, and employees called Zumiez stash members acting like your best friend. It was a formula designed to feel legit, except to the people who actually cared about legitimacy, the ones who lived skateboarding. For them, Zumiez didn't represent rebellion. It represented everything skateboarding wasn't. The resentment simmered, but to outsiders, Zumiez was a clear success story. To insiders, skaters, local shop owners, and even employees, it looked like a slow betrayal. Because while Zumiez grew rich selling the image of skate culture, the actual culture that inspired it began to fade. Local skate shops started closing. Core brands disappeared from shelves, and the skaters who once built the identity that Zumiez sold began speaking out. Their message was clear: Zumiez wasn't part of skateboarding, it was profiting from it. But before we talk about how Zumiez lost the skaters, and eventually its own momentum, we need to understand what made it so addictive in the first place. Why did millions of teens love shopping there, even when the community behind it didn't? That's the irony of Zumiez. It didn't just sell boards and shirts, it sold the feeling of fitting in, even if it wasn't real. And that illusion worked, for a while. For a long time, Zumiez understood one thing better than anyone else: how to make rebellion profitable. Dim lighting, loud punk or hip-hop echoing off the walls, flat screens looping skate clips and snowboarding montages, staff in beanies and lanyards greeting customers like they were all part of the same crew. It looked legit, it felt real, but under the surface, it was scripted. Every greeting, every "what's up dude," every casual chat about a new Thrasher hoodie, all of it was part of a playbook written at headquarters in Linwood, Washington. The goal wasn't to connect, the goal was to sell. By the late 2000s, Zumiez had mastered the art of mall marketing, creating a fantasy version of skate culture that parents found harmless and kids found aspirational. Real skate shops smelled like grip tape and sweat. Zumiez smelled like cologne and chain store air conditioning. Still, for kids growing up far away from any local skate scene, Zumiez was often their only window into that world, and that's where the story starts to fracture. Because what happens when a big box retailer becomes the face of a movement it doesn't actually understand? Inside skateboarding, culture meets everything. It's not about how high you can ollie or what board you ride, it's about belonging to something earned and self-made. That's why local skate shops were sacred. They weren't just stores, they were hangouts, meeting spots, and places where new skaters learned from veterans. They sponsored contests, helped build skate parks, and gave local kids their first decks at a discount. Zumiez didn't do that. Their goal wasn't to build a scene, it was to dominate a market. According to skaters, that's where the resentment started. Zumiez's employees rarely skated themselves. Most didn't even know the difference between a kickflip and a heel flip. Yet, they were the ones selling skateboards to beginners. That disconnect became the core of the hate. To hardcore skaters, Zumiez wasn't a skate shop. It was a fashion store that used the skate world as decoration. The internet made that anger louder. On forums like r/Zumiez, stories piled up from customers and employees alike. People complained about rude managers, price markups, and poor product knowledge. One Redditor called out Zumiez for refusing to honor a discounted deck. Another employee later admitted the price was real, the store just wouldn't budge. The incident went viral among skaters. HQ Polish was eating away at the soul. The post ended with a now familiar rallying cry. This is what happens when you buy from a chain store. Always buy local. The internet exposed the cracks, but the market would soon split them wide open. Skateboarders didn't just dislike Zumiez, they actively campaigned against it. Local shop owners started noticing a pattern. Every time a Zumiez opened in their city, sales dropped. Parents, unaware of the difference between a local skate shop and a mall chain, bought their kids' first boards from Zumiez. That one decision repeated across hundreds of towns, and small shops started closing. Once those locals were gone, Zumiez often shut down too, leaving the town without a skate shop at all. To the corporation, it was business. To skaters, it was betrayal. In interviews and videos, small shop owners explain the damage. One said it best. They come into town, undercut prices, wipe out the local scene, and then leave when sales drop. For them, it's a write-off. For us, it's our whole life. That wasn't an exaggeration. Zumiez's business model relied on bulk deals with large manufacturers, meaning small independent brands, the lifeblood of real skate culture, couldn't even get shelf space. In the name of youth lifestyle retail, Zumiez had turned skateboarding into a mall aesthetic. And in doing so, they'd made themselves the enemy of the very community they claimed to represent. By the 2010s, Zumiez had become a symbol, not of skateboarding's cool, but of its commercialization. They sold brands that had nothing to do with skating. They filled their shelves with trendy streetwear, anime-inspired hoodies, and accessories designed for everyone who wanted to look like a skater without ever stepping on a board. Zumiez wasn't helping people discover the sport. It was watering it down, turning a raw, underground movement into a fashion trend. The sentiment online was, Zumiez is for people who want to dress like they skate, not people who actually do. Inside the community, that kind of fakery is worse than failure. Zumiez became a punchline, the store for posers. Even their employees were mocked for pretending to be part of a culture they didn't understand. Videos and memes circulated of staff trying to grip boards or explain trucks incorrectly. To be fair, Zumiez tried. From 2000 to 2013, they ran something called the Zumiez Couch Tour, a traveling event series that featured pro skate demos, live bands, and local amateur competitions. It was free, high energy, and drew crowds. But even then, skaters criticized it for being more of a marketing stunt than community event. Zumiez didn't sponsor riders themselves, they partnered with existing skate brands to co-host. It looked good on paper, but it didn't change the perception that Zumiez was borrowing credibility instead of earning it. Eventually, even the couch tour ended. Without real grassroots support, the event couldn't hold up. It faded quietly, much like Zumiez's image as a skate shop. Fast forward to the 2020s, Zumiez was still standing, but the cracks were showing. Online retail had changed everything. The same teens who once killed time at the mall were now buying decks and clothes directly from brands or online skate shops like CCS and Skate Warehouse. Zumiez, built on mall traffic, suddenly felt like a relic. The company reported its first ever annual net loss in 2023, over $62 million. Sales dropped nearly 9% from the previous year. CEO Rick Brooks called it a disappointing year. They began closing underperforming stores across the US and slowing down European expansion. The excuses were familiar: inflation, changing trends, a challenging global environment. But the truth was simpler. Zumiez had lost its identity. They weren't the core skate shop skaters wanted, or the trendy youth brand teens cared about. They were stuck in the middle, too corporate for culture, too outdated for fashion. Even the stock told the story. In early 2025, Zumiez shares dropped 13.6% in a single afternoon after weak holiday sales. From their 52-week high of $29.11, they plummeted to $16.88. Investors who'd bought in 5 years earlier had lost nearly half their money. Analysts pointed out brutal truths. Same-store sales were shrinking nearly 7% a year, earnings per share down 25%, and the company was burning cash faster than it could make it. Zumiez wasn't just out of touch, it was running out of time. Meanwhile, the skateboarding world had evolved. New brands like Welcome, Polar, and Weekend were born from the streets, run by skaters, filmed by skaters, sold by skaters. Social media turned local scenes into global movements. Skaters can now support real brands directly through Instagram or independent web shops. Zumiez, built on the mall experience, just couldn't keep up. Even its biggest draw, accessibility, stopped being an advantage once anyone could order online from anywhere. Suddenly, Zumiez's entire model felt ancient. They were still stocking Thrasher hoodies long after the fashion world had moved past them. The brands they carried were ones real skaters had already abandoned. It became painfully clear. Zumiez wasn't setting trends anymore. They were following them. The irony is that many of those customers weren't even hardcore skaters. They were casual buyers who had once defended Zumiez. Now even they were done. Inside Zumiez headquarters, the leadership tried to stay optimistic. CEO Rick Brooks insisted the company had navigated down cycles before. But the difference this time was that the world around them had changed, and Zumiez wasn't built for it. By 2024, Zumiez was no longer fooling anyone. The company that once bragged about authenticity had become a parody of itself. Every mall still open had one. Stores that felt hollow, blasting the same music to half-empty racks, selling clothes from brands no skater cared about anymore. What once felt alive now felt forced. Even casual shoppers could feel it. Employees complained online that they were pushed to sell memberships and upsell accessories no one wanted. Sales targets were brutal, turnover was high, and morale was low. Zumiez had built an empire pretending to be a community. Now, that illusion was falling apart in real time. The company's stock collapsed again after a disappointing holiday quarter. Investors panicked. Executives tried to downplay it, promising long-term strategy, but the numbers spoke louder than their optimism. Revenue was falling, store closures were accelerating, and online sales were stagnant. And for the first time in its 40-year history, Zumiez looked old. The idea that a store in the mall could own the skate scene felt ridiculous now. Zumiez was a relic of a time when malls shaped identity. Now, identity was shaped online, by creators, not corporations. What Zumiez didn't understand was that skateboarding was never about clothes or image. It was about doing something that felt free, and when that spirit gets repackaged and sold, it loses meaning. The backlash wasn't emotional anymore. It was cultural. Zumiez had become irrelevant. Even their attempts to appeal to younger buyers failed. They leaned into streetwear trends years too late, carrying the same graphic tees everyone had already seen on Instagram. The board announced a restructuring plan. Dozens of stores were quietly shut down across the US, Canada, and Europe. The company tried to sound confident, calling it a transition phase, but no one believed it. For the skate community, this wasn't tragedy, it was closure. Zumiez had spent decades selling a culture that never wanted them. Now, it was finally catching up. There's something poetic about it. For years, Zumiez profited from an identity it didn't earn. It watched local shops vanish while pretending to support the scene, and now the market was given its verdict. The same community Zumiez had once ignored was thriving again, this time without it. Independent skate shops were rebuilding through online orders and loyalty. Skater-owned brands were booming. Zumiez, meanwhile, is shrinking. It wasn't hate driving the satisfaction, it was justice. Because for every skater who watched their local shop close, for every kid who learned the difference between real and fake community, this downfall meant something. It proved that authenticity still matters. Zumiez's story isn't just about a company losing money, it's about what happens when you mistake image for identity. They thought skateboarding could be packaged and sold like any other product. They believed culture was a costume, but culture fights back. And the downfall of Zumiez shows exactly that, how a community can outlast corporations that try to exploit it. Skateboarding survived every trend, every phase, every company that tried to commercialize it, because real skaters don't care about branding, they care about skating. Zumiez never understood that, and that's why they fell. Ask any skater today what Zumiez means, and they'll tell you, nothing. It's just another store. But ask them what skateboarding means, and you'll see it in their eyes. It's freedom, it's community, it's everything Zumiez tried to package and sell but never understood. The brand is still around, but the scene it tried to own, that's alive and well, in local skate shops, in parking lots, and every curb where someone's still chasing that feeling. And if you want to learn what happened to the biggest skate shoe brands, check out the next video. Drop a comment and tell us, did Zumiez kill your local skate shop when it came to town? Thanks for watching, stay wicked, and always support your local skate shop.